All stories on this channel are original content, fully protected by copyright and intellectual property laws. Any unauthorized copying, re-uploading, narration, or use of these stories will be considered copyright infringement and may lead to serious legal consequences. These stories are exclusively owned by this channel. Respect the rights or face legal action. This story was sent to me by one of my subscribers, Emily R., and I wanted to share it on the channel. 3 years ago, when I had just moved to San Francisco for college, something happened that I'll never forget. I was 21 years old at the time and had just left my small, peaceful hometown in Europe for the big city. It was around 1 a.m. when I was heading home from a house party in San Francisco. Since I was living just outside the city near the airport, I decided to take the train there and then grab a cab home to save some money. I was alone, wearing a dress and heels, and still a little tipsy from the party. I took the Bay Area Rapid Transit to the airport, but when I got off, I got lost trying to find the exit. The airport was quiet and nearly empty. After wandering for a bit, I noticed one of those small airport trains, the air train, and thought it might take me to the main entrance. I got on, and the moment the doors closed, I regretted it. The train was completely empty except for me and a bald man, probably in his mid to late 30s. He started talking to me almost immediately, asking where I was from, if I was a student, whether I had a boyfriend, and even if he could have my phone number. His tone wasn't exactly threatening, but something about him made me uneasy. I wasn't used to strange older men striking up conversations with me, so I tried to stay polite. I even gave him my number, figuring I could just ignore him later. When the air train finally stopped, I realized I had made a mistake. We weren't at the main entrance. Instead, we were somewhere on the far side of the airport, completely deserted. There were no people, no cars, no lights, just dark buildings and silence. I started walking quickly toward what I thought was the main terminal, but it was far away. He followed me. Soon, we were the only two people walking in the dark, and I could hear his footsteps getting closer. He told me I shouldn't be out there alone because it was dangerous. Then, without warning, he pulled out a huge knife. My heart nearly stopped. He held the knife casually, showing it to me as he said, "You never know what kind of people are out here. You have to protect yourself." I could barely breathe. I nodded nervously and muttered something like, "Yeah, okay," before speeding up my pace. I didn't want to provoke him or show fear, but every step felt like forever. Finally, I reached the main terminal lights and spotted a cab waiting near the entrance. I practically ran to it, got inside, and told the driver to go fast. Nothing happened beyond that, but I was terrified the whole ride home. When I finally lay in bed that night, still shaken and trying to calm down, my phone buzzed. It was a message from him. He had sent me a picture, an explicit one. That image, combined with the memory of him holding that knife in the dark, still haunts me to this day. Thank you to Emily R. for sending this terrifying story. If you have a story, send it in and it might be featured next. This story was sent to me by one of my subscribers, Jason M., and I wanted to share it on the channel. Before I got my car in my freshman year of college, I used Lyft almost every day to get to work during the summer. In the fall and winter, I usually walked, even at night. I had taken hundreds of Lyfts over time, and aside from the occasional chatty driver or someone with a strong political opinion, everything was always fine. One day, I ordered a Lyft like normal. The app said my driver would arrive in 7 minutes. I stepped outside a couple of minutes early to wait, and that's when I noticed a car already sitting in my driveway. It looked almost identical to the one shown in the app. Same color, same size, same general appearance. The only thing missing were the small details you'd only notice if you looked closely. But according to the app, my driver was still 2 minutes away. I figured it was just a coincidence, maybe a visitor from next door, so I ignored it. Then the driver rolled down his window and looked right at me. I walked over, thinking maybe he was lost and needed directions. He told me he was my Lyft driver and even showed me his phone screen, which displayed my name and profile, just like a real Lyft driver would. I was confused, but still didn't sense danger. In my naive teenage mind, I thought maybe Lyft accidentally sent 2 drivers. I told him he wasn't the driver shown on my app, but before I could say much else, my real driver pulled up. He rolled down his window and I explained that there was another guy claiming to be my ride. I said I might just go with the first guy since he arrived first. My real driver immediately told me you should go with whoever's name and car show up on your phone. That made sense, so I turned around to tell the first guy I'd go with the other driver, but he was already gone. He drove off fast, his tinted windows hiding his face completely. When I got into the real Lyft, my driver looked shaken. He said that in 10 years of driving for Lyft, he had never heard of anything like that happening. That's when it really hit me how terrifying the situation was. The fake driver had shown up early, driving a nearly identical car with my personal info on his phone, something he should not have had access to. It meant he wasn't just some random creep. He had planned this. If my real driver hadn't shown up right then, I might have gotten into his car. I was shaken the rest of the day. I filed a report with Lyft, but without any solid evidence or a license plate number, there wasn't much they could do. My real driver said he'd shared the story with other drivers online to warn them. That man probably saved my life. When my dad found out, he immediately bought me a car so I'd never have to depend on ride shares again. At least something good came out of it, besides the trauma. Looking back, I'm almost certain that man was a human trafficker or kidnapper. People like that must have ways to access Lyft's systems or track frequent riders like me. I've deleted the app and my account since then. Always check the license plates. It could save your life. Thank you to Jason M. for sending this terrifying story. If you have a story, send it in and it might be featured next. This story was sent to me by one of my subscribers, Amanda T., and I wanted to share it on the channel. This happened years ago, but thinking about it still makes my skin crawl. It was around Valentine's Day when I started remembering this nearly forgotten first date with a guy my friend Mark had set me up with. Mark worked at a local music store with this guy. Let's call him Mike. I had met him briefly once before at an ICP concert we'd all gone to. He seemed pretty normal, charming, funny, even good-looking. Through Mark, he got my number, and after a few conversations, we decided to go out. The date started off fine. We went to a lively bar with a live band, and he seemed nice enough. Easy to talk to, good sense of humor. Later in the night, Mike suggested that we leave and hang out somewhere quieter. He mentioned a nearby park where we could just sit and talk. I was 19 and naive, so I agreed without much thought. It was summer, still light outside, and I figured it would be harmless. We parked near the edge of the park and started talking. The conversation flowed easily, and for a while, it felt like a normal, fun date. At one point, he leaned over and kissed me. I remember feeling butterflies until I glanced around and realized it had gotten completely dark. Then, everything changed. After that kiss, he pulled away, staring out the car window with this strange grin on his face. Then, without warning, he turned to me and said, "I'm taking you into those woods and we're gonna have a really good time." I froze. I thought he was joking at first, so I laughed nervously and said I'd rather stay in the car. But his expression shifted. He suddenly looked angry.
His whole demeanor changed, like he was two different people. He said, "Why not? Come on, let's just go into the woods. I promise I won't kill you." He laughed after saying it like it was some dark joke, but there was no humor in his eyes. My stomach turned. Every instinct I had was screaming to get away, but I tried to play it cool. I didn't want to make him angry or seem scared, so I smiled awkwardly and said I was tired and wanted to go home. He leaned back in his seat and started fake whining like a child, saying, "Oh, come on, it'll be fun. Let's just go into the woods." That's when my fear turned into anger. I told him flatly, "I'm ready to go home now." For a moment, he just stared at me. Then, without a word, he started the car. The entire drive back was silent and tense. When we finally pulled up to my house, he suddenly switched back to being apologetic, saying he was just joking and didn't mean to freak me out. I muttered a quick goodbye and got out as fast as I could. Later, I told Mark what happened. He was horrified and said he'd heard rumors that Mike could be a real sex maniac. After that, Mark completely cut ties with him. I look back on it now and realize how easily that night could have turned into something much worse. My 19-year-old self had no idea how dangerous that situation really was. Thank you to Amanda T for sending in this terrifying story. If you have a story, send it in and it might be featured next.
This story was sent to me by one of my subscribers, Sarah L., and I wanted to share it on the channel. About 5 years ago, when I was 23, I went through something that still makes my skin crawl. I had just come out of my first serious relationship a year earlier. That guy had been my first love, my first everything. And when he ended things with no interest in trying again, I was heartbroken. After a year of feeling lost and being carelessly promiscuous, I decided to start dating again in a more serious way. That's when I met a guy named Rick on a dating website. He was a few years older, an ex-Marine, charming, funny, and easy to talk to. After chatting for a few days, he asked for my number and we decided to meet in person. I drove to his house and immediately noticed he lived with a few other men who looked sketchy. The neighborhood itself was nice, but their house was dirty and poorly kept, and his roommates gave off bad vibes. That was my first red flag, but I ignored it. I was young, naive, and wanted to believe the best in people. When Rick came out to meet me, he smiled, hugged me, and handed me a motorcycle helmet. I had never been on a motorcycle before, but it was something I'd always wanted to try. I figured, why not? He took me on a long, winding road that ran through a secluded area just outside town. It was springtime, about 5 p.m., and at first the ride was exciting. But as we continued, I realized there were no other cars around, and the sound of the engine echoed through the empty woods. The sun started to dip lower, shadows stretched across the road, and an uneasy feeling grew in my chest. That's when the alarm bells went off in my head. I didn't know this man. We were completely alone. I had no idea where we were, and it was getting dark. I told him we should turn back, but he just laughed and asked, "What's wrong? Are you scared?" Trying to stay calm, I told him I needed to get home because my parents were expecting me for dinner. He kept driving. My heart was pounding as I pictured all the terrible things that could happen. My body left in a ditch somewhere, my family never knowing what happened to me. I asked him again, this time firmly, to turn around. He finally sighed, muttered something under his breath, and headed back. The next day, I convinced myself I overreacted. Maybe he was just showing me the scenic route. Against my better judgment, I agreed to see him again. A few days later, we met at a sports bar to watch a hockey game. From the moment we sat down, Rick acted possessive, keeping his arm tightly around me, constantly trying to make out with me, and talking nonstop about our future together. He kept saying things like, "I'd make such a protective boyfriend," and "you'd be safe with me." It made my skin crawl. I wanted to leave, but my car was still at his house. When we finally got back, he insisted I come inside just for a few minutes. I reluctantly agreed, planning to leave as soon as possible. But the moment we stepped into his room, he pounced, grabbing me, kissing me, and trying to take things further. I kept pushing him away, telling him I had to go, but he wouldn't stop. His tone shifted from playful to aggressive, and I could feel how aroused he was. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. He told me I wasn't leaving until we did something. I panicked. I didn't know what he might do if I resisted any longer, so I made a terrible, desperate decision. I did what I had to do to get out of there. I pretended to go along with it, hoping he'd finish quickly. Every second felt like an eternity, but eventually it was over. I grabbed my things and ran out the door the moment I could, driving home with tears in my eyes. After that night, he kept calling and texting me nonstop. When I ignored him, he'd insult me, then apologize and claim it was because he liked me too much. I blocked him. Then he tried Instagram, so I blocked him there. Then Facebook. Then Snapchat. That was the last time I ever saw him. But sometimes I still think about how easily that night could have ended differently. I'm just grateful I got out alive. Thank you to Sarah L. for sending in this terrifying story. If you have a story, send it in and it might be featured next.